Hello, hello, and welcome to the Charlotte Mason Enrichment Podcast. My name is Elise Thompson, and I'm the host. I'm so excited that you have tuned in to listen to this podcast. We are a new Charlotte Mason podcast. I'll probably say that for the whole first season because it just feels so new and exciting. But we're new, and we're just excited to come into your home and to your ears. And just my whole heart and desire is just to help my fellow Charlotte Mason families, and just encourage you and equip you with all of the great things that are going to help you to really enjoy the journey of being a homeschool mom. So I am excited about my guest today. I am joined with Miss Melissa McMahan. And for those of you who maybe never heard of Miss Melissa, she is wonderful. She came to Tulsa last summer and spoke at our Charlotte Mason Enrichment Conference. And we just had such a wonderful time. We laughed, we cried, we learned a lot. And so I knew when I started this podcast, I was like, I got to have Miss Melissa back. And so, we're excited to jump in today's topic. I sent her a text about a month ago, and I was like, okay, Miss Melissa, I think I want to talk about Charlotte Mason and parenting, and how implementing Charlotte Mason's principles makes you a better parent. And she was like, oh, that's a good one. I'm going to think on that one, and we could discuss it. So that's our topic today. But before we dive into it, welcome, Miss Melissa. So glad you're joining us.
Hey, Elise. Thanks so much for inviting me. It was such a joy to go to Tulsa last summer and meet you in person. And I'm just so impressed with what you're doing with your local moms there and now to a broader mom community. And I just love that you're reaching out and trying to support and encourage other homeschool moms.
Thank you so much, Miss Melissa. Okay, guys, when Miss Melissa came to Tulsa, it was an interesting time in the world. The airlines decided that they were just all not going to work. And so it was honestly a miracle that you made it to Tulsa. But it took you a few days to get back home.
It did. It was an adventure, but it was lovely. It's kind of like childbirth. You forget all the bad parts and just remember the really good parts. So, yes, I loved my time with y'all. It was great.
Oh, that's so great. I'm glad you forgot about that. So Miss Melissa has 5 girls, 5 lovely ladies. You've got a few that are already graduated and off to continue their education, and then you have some that are at home. So tell us about your journey in motherhood. And
sure. Well, that's a long story, so I will condense it very much. I'm married to Mike. My oldest is 21 and a senior in college. She's majoring in biomedical sciences, so she'll be headed to med school, maybe having a gap year next year, which I am pretty excited about myself. And then my second is a junior studying cybersecurity engineering. My third is 18, and she's a senior about to graduate and wants to study accounting. My fourth is a junior in high school, year 11, and then my baby is year 7 with Ambleside, and I can't believe it's my last year 7 because that's my very favorite. And with each year that passes, you're like, oh, wow, I've done this for 5 times now, and it's still not enough. I'm still going to miss it. So,
wow.
So it's been a really fun adventure. I never thought that I would homeschool. It was just kind of something that we fell into and then just kept continuing to homeschool because it was a good fit for our family. Each year we have reevaluated, and we continue to reevaluate if we're going to continue it for one or all children for the following year. And so far, it's just been a really great fit for our family, and it's been great for all of our girls who are so very different from each other. But that's the beauty of a Charlotte Mason education, is that we're able to treat each child as their own individual people, and they've been able to grow in different ways because of that focus on the individual in our homeschool.
Man, that is like huge and such a gift, that they can all grow and thrive in their own ways. But It's really cool because I think that attributes to the principles and the philosophy of Charlotte Mason, is that it's it works for all, no matter how different they are. Because I think that is something that we forget sometimes. It's like, they all came from my husband and I, and they all live under our roofs, but they're all very different people.
So different. Yes.
Great that they can all, follow the same principles, but all thrive in their different gifts and talents and bends. So
yes. And we just see that more and more as they get older and pursue their own things with confidence, and they're exposed to different things. I mean, I never would have exposed my daughter to cybersecurity because I have no interest in it or desire to learn more about it. But she came across it. She pursued it. She decided that would be a great career path for her, and she has thrived with it. And my third daughter going into accounting, I love that for her, and I'm excited for her, but it's not something that I would have chosen at all.
Yeah.
But, once they find their passion or the things that they really want to sink into, our job is to come alongside and help them with that.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. So obviously you have had a lot of years of parenting with 5 girls, so 20 plus years. And so we, we're just talking about, how doing Charlotte Mason has really kind of helped you along the journey of parenting your 5 different, individual people and personalities. And so I think the first thing that you mentioned that helped you was Charlotte's first principle.
Yes, that children are born persons. And I think this is what really attracted me to the Charlotte Mason philosophy, is because it fit my parenting philosophy. I wasn't comfortable with a very authoritarian, top-down approach. I'm going to make my child into a mini me. That just didn't sit right with me. And I also wasn't comfortable with a completely child-led approach that whatever they do is great and we should follow them because they're children, they don't know. But when I found Charlotte Mason, I was like, oh, this is the coming alongside that I already believe is true and the very best approach for most any relationship, but especially parenting. And so it was really, you could say that it was the parenting philosophy of Charlotte Mason that kind of led me to the educational philosophy of Charlotte Mason. Just that first principle, that children are born persons. We see that in all of our relations with anybody we meet, but especially when we are raising them in our own home. Like you said, they might have the same DNA background, they have the same environment, but they're very, very different. And so being able to come alongside them from the very get-go as a parent, and then continuing that parenting into education, it just really spoke to me from the beginning, and I've only seen it play out to be true. I've not yet seen it contradicted in my experience.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So what are some other things that you have really gleaned from Charlotte Mason that have helped you navigate parenting well?
Well, part of it, I think a lot of people, when they're thinking about homeschooling, they think, well, I can't go into homeschooling because I can't be responsible for the education of my child. And I always encourage them that from the moment the child is born, you're already educating your child. In those preschool years, you're teaching them how to respond to a human smile, how to stand up, how to walk, how to use the potty, how to navigate the world. So we're already educating them. So when we start doing formal education, sometimes we're thinking, well, I can't be the teacher. I don't know about all of these subjects. Well, one of Charlotte's principles is that the books are the teachers. We are the guides for that. We are laying the feast for them. And so that's true with parenting as well, that it does not have to be a top-down. I don't have to know everything, which is good because I don't. And the older my teenage daughters get, the more I realize I don't know anything. So we are growing along with them and letting other resources out there be sources of wisdom for them. Not one of us knows everything about everything. Yeah. So that humility that comes in acknowledging that we are our child's guide, philosopher, and friend, but we're not the dictator. We're not the one telling them everything that they need to know about everything. We are relying on other experts in our life. Yeah. And so that carries over from education into parenting. Yeah. And, certainly see that in my own life, and I see that in my children's lives. And I see it in my spiritual life as well, that we've got all these resources, and that the Holy Spirit is the one who is teaching us directly through the scripture. And it can't be any one person who's going to be that for us.
Yeah. No, I think that's really huge. Because I kind of had that like aha moment too, where it's like, people say, oh, I could never homeschool. And it's like, you've already taught your kid so much. Like they've done great already. Like you can continue.
You are homeschooling.
Yeah, that's very true. That is very, very true. And so I think it is good to realize like it doesn't all fall on you, no matter if it's, teaching them math or, teaching them spiritual principles. Like we have help in all of these areas. And so kind of taking that pressure off of ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just the idea of laying a feast for our children, that is something that we may have curated, or if we're using a curriculum, the curriculum has curated that for us. And the wisdom of all these other different people saying, this is a good book. Your child should try this. We might not be familiar with it, but we approach it with humility and say, people say that this is worth reading. We should read this and draw our own conclusions from it. So again, the older I get, the more important humility becomes to me. But even just saying that deflates humility, because anytime you look at it, it goes away. So, but just realizing who I am in all of this, and that I'm not the end all of this. I am at best a facilitator as a parent, and as a parent directing my child's education. God is the ultimate educator, and he's given us so many resources in this, and that my job again is to come alongside and help lay out that feast as a guide to my child.
That's so good. That's so good. I think, it's good to remember our role in all of this. It's like we get to come alongside them spiritually and encouraging them and pointing them, toward God. But at the end of the day, they have to make those choices. But we're helping to present, Christ to them, present the gospel to them. But then it's up to them to decide. And so it's good to understand our role as parents and as educators.
Yes. And a big part of that role is providing the resources and the tools. And again, I feel like the Charlotte Mason philosophy helps with education and with life, and that, like I said, I know nothing about cybersecurity, but I could help her find resources to help her learn about that. And I could encourage her in that. Other things of life that we might be coming alongside of our children and helping them just with life issues of choosing a mate someday. I don't know the right decision, but I can give you the resources and the tools and the prayer for that and come alongside. So that's never going to stop, Right. That's just parenting and being a good friend. But also being proactive in helping with those resources and tools. And narration, I gotta say, it's not just for education. Narration is organizing our thoughts. And if we think that that's just for the school years, we are so wrong in that. That is a skill that is a tool that we can help our children have that will help them all of their lives. It has certainly helped me if I narrate what I've read or what I've heard in a sermon or anything else. That helps to organize our minds. And that's a gift we can give them forever.
Yes, it's so good. It's a good communication skill. I had this aha moment. My husband is going to school of ministry at our church. And most days after he gets out of class, he calls me and I ask him, tell me about what you learned today. And I mean, he could be talking for like 30 or so minutes. And I just had this moment. I'm like, oh, he is narrating back to me everything he learned today in school. And I thought that was so cool. Like he's doing that and he doesn't even know per se that he's doing that, but it's helping him to process and internalize the things that he's learning. I'm like, this is great.
And he's teaching you by sharing this information that he has taken in too.
I feel like I'm going to school too. It's great.
Right. You got it on both ends.
Yes, absolutely. So Yeah, it's good, but it's a good communication skill to be able to tell back,
Yes.
what you've learned in all aspects of our lives.
Yes.
So,
And part of letting the books be the teacher too, and that posture of humility with that is that we are expecting to grow alongside with our child. That again, we're not expected to know everything. We're not expected to have read everything. A lot of moms get into such a tizzy about having to pre-read everything. You don't have to. You can learn along with it. Like as your husband is sharing what he's learning, you've just learned from that as well, and that we are growing alongside of our children, and it's good for them to see that too. That we are always learning, and that this continues past a diploma. Education is forever, that we are always to be renewing our minds, and that we can set that expectation and that habit in their own lives as we're doing that.
That's really cool. So I think what I hear what like keeps coming up is that like we don't have to feel like we know everything. And I think,
please, no, yes.
yeah. And I think that's like refreshing, because it does take the pressure off of us, but it's not also an excuse to not be learning and growing, but to know that we can grow alongside of our kids.
Yes.
And that, when we need to know something or we need to guide them in a direction, it's really great because I think that's part of the gift of the Holy Spirit. Like he helps us to know what to think and to know how to take the next step. Obviously, we have to be humble enough to receive that help and to acknowledge that we need that help. But it's great to know that like we don't have to have all the answers ahead of time, basically.
Yes. My husband and I like to joke too that we wish we knew as much about parenting now as we did the day before our first child was born. Because parenting is just a constant humiliation.
Yeah.
And same thing about homeschooling. You can read all the stuff when they're little, and you start that year one, and you know everything. And there are going to be some curveballs, and that's okay.
Yeah.
There should be. Our children are born persons. They're not like this other person's child that she told you how to deal with that instance, but your child is not going to be that way. Yeah. So just again, being willing to learn, being open yourself, being a student yourself, and having that posture of humility. It's just good parenting advice, I would say, but also good, especially good for the educating mom.
No, that's so good. So what are some things like, I know Charlotte talks a lot about like habit training and also, taking responsibility for like the child taking responsibility for their education. So what does that look like? Maybe those two things, what have those looked like from when your kids were younger until now you've got adults and, almost adults.
Yeah.
Like what is that transition and it looks like from when they were younger till, now?
Yeah, well, it starts with habit training when they're really little. And if anybody listening to this has not done any habit training, you probably have. You haven't put that title to it, teaching your child to make the bed or to put their dishes in the sink or put on their coat or brush their teeth, whatever that is, that's part of habit training. And then you'll add to that just to help them be a functional human being. So having an atmosphere of that and different expectations that are appropriate for different ages, I think, then increasing that. And one of my soapboxes too, because I have 5 children and they're pretty close in age, but I was always really careful to make sure, or I tried to be careful to make sure the older ones got a little more responsibility and a little more of the perks of being older, but tried not to treat them as a clump as much as possible. So, making sure that they're growing in responsibility with all of this and in benefits. So then it just becomes a more natural segue into, now my high schoolers are taking some dual enrollment courses, and, I can help you sign up for them. I can help you get your books for them. I can remind you when your test is. But in the end, it's your responsibility. And I will give you the tools for that, and I will come alongside. But it's a gradual letting go and letting them have their own habits with that, and letting them fail, which is the hard part, because we do want to rescue and we do want them to have that good grade and not suffer the penalty and the pain of not doing what they should have done. But we learn so much more in adversity and in our own failures, and those are lessons that we hold from them if we don't let them reap what they sow. Sometimes, we can simply lessen the effects, but that's an important part of growing up, as any adult can tell you, that things have not always gone perfectly smoothly, and being able to learn how to deal with adversity from an early age and increasing in that is a gift that we can give our children. And especially as they're growing into young adulthood, where, a lot of their peers have had things done for them, and then they're on their own, and either they don't know how, or they don't want to, or their expectations are a little warped. And, it's a gift we can give our children, that they can learn how to take responsibility for themselves and to learn how to deal with adversity. And part of learning how to deal with adversity is knowing that it's not as bad as you think it is. It's rarely catastrophic. And we can remind ourselves of this too, that a bad grade is not the end of everything. That there's growth in that. And so just helping them see those growth opportunities and helping them build good habits in themselves that can take them into adulthood.
Yeah, no, that's so good. So did you kind of have that mindset of letting your kids, letting your girls kind of really take responsibility for a lot of their education, like with your first daughter? Or was that something that you kind of came into as, the second and the third?
Because we did have 5 close together, I did push independence pretty early so that the older ones could, take control of their own reading and narration. And I might have expected a little too much of them, as we normally do with our eldest too. You're like, oh, they can do this. And then when the baby is that same age, you're like, there's no way the baby could do that. That's the baby. Which is how the baby gets away with not doing as many chores. So there are always those dynamics in place. But, it might just be part of my own personality as an eldest daughter in my own home to, I want you to be responsible. I want you to be able to take care of yourself. But being able to see that as a gift to them and not something that's just more convenient for me.
Sure. Yeah.
Because part of it is when they have better habits. Yeah. Mom has smooth and easy days, and that's true.
Yeah.
But we don't want to look at this selfishly. We also want to look at it as it's smooth and easy days for them.
Right.
And you're preparing them for when they're in college. They know how to deal with just the daily disappointments of life and be able to go on from that.
Yeah.
So it's not about us, although that might be a motivator, but it really is to help them to live a full life.
No, it's really good. I think we're easing them into adulthood. I remember when I went to college, I had roommates, and obviously they were from different countries, but it was a shock for them because they'd never had to do their laundry, or they never had to, cook for themselves, and all these little things that like we could take for granted, or that sometimes it is easier for us to do for our kids instead of taking the time to train them. But those friends got like thrusted into adulthood, and it was not pleasant at the very beginning for them. So
there's enough of entering into adulthood that makes it difficult that this is a way that we can help our children ease in a little bit. So in high school, we have tried to do some dual enrollment classes just to give a taste of what it's like to have a different teacher other than mom, to have different deadlines, to deal with disappointing tests or disappointing scores. All of that's really valuable while they're still under our roof, and we can show them how to deal with that. We're a theatrical family. We like to be involved in different community theater, and we have auditions, and then we have disappointing results that we don't get the parts we want. And how we deal with that is great training. We can be sad for ourselves, but very happy for our friends and be good team players and all of that. So same thing in sports, whatever circumstance you can find in that. Adulthood has its own difficulties, but we can do things to help that transition a little bit more easily.
That's so good. That's so good. I think, and it all comes back to just the training that we get to do with our kids while they're under our roof, and just understanding again, like what a gift we are giving them.
Yes.
And it could be hard, in the moment. Those times could not be our funnest days, but seeing the long game and playing that out and knowing that it's going to really prepare them and set them up for success.
And narration. I mean, I did not think of this particularly as a parenting thing, but just as far as helping our children organize their thoughts from a young age, orally and then in written form, but continuing with orally. It has helped them so much as young adults, even just in conversations with friends, in being able to speak, to be able to write letters to professors or emails to professors. All of that. They could do it without narration, but narration has made it so much easier. And, I don't want to be the one that says it always goes back to narration, but a lot of it does. A lot of it really does.
Yeah.
And there's no magic bullet for all of this stuff, but narration is key. And you really can't do a Charlotte Mason-based education without emphasizing narration, which I knew, but I'm really seeing the benefits of it now.
That's really cool. Like, you knew it, but it's like, you're really seeing so many benefits maybe that you didn't realize.
No, not at all. Not at all.
That is so cool. I love that. Well, any other thoughts on just parenting and?
Well, yes. A part of another aspect of Charlotte Mason too is just the end goal for our children. And as parents, we get blinders on, and we're just thinking of the next thing, and especially the holiday season, we're like, oh, as we're recording this, I just see the next thing in front of us, or the next school year, or what do we do about high school, or what do we do about college, all of that. But the end goal for Charlotte Mason was how much the youth cares.
Right.
And that has just really stuck in my mind for a long time now, but especially brought to mind now. My first 3 children are interested in STEM careers, but they care about Shakespeare, and they care about poetry. They care about many orders of things, as Mason said. And they really do care about it. It's not just something to learn. It's not something to be puffed up. And it brings me back to 1 Corinthians 13, just how we can be doing all these things, but without love, it's just a clanging cymbal and a noisy gong. Yeah. And I feel like our education can be that way too. If we just are checking off all the boxes, and our parenting can be that way too. If we're just checking off the boxes and doing the next thing, sure, we're doing that stuff, but without the love, without caring about it, it really is a clinging cymbal. And I know there are pressures to parenting. I feel them. 5 daughters, I feel pressures of parenting. But if love is not central in that, then it is just going to be a noisy gong and a clanging cymbal. So that needs to be a central part, and not lose sight of that in the midst of all of the daily tedious, the things that we have to do, and marking off the checklist, that love and caring about these things has to be part of it.
That's huge. Oh my goodness.
We could do another podcast on that.
Yeah, no, that's so good. It's so good. I feel that the checking off of the list, or
it's hard not to. It's hard not to.
Yeah. I think because, a lot of times as moms, home educators, we're schooling the children, and we're managing the home, and, any extracurricular things. And if we have things that, we have, get to do passion projects. I know, like you're a ballet instructor, and you teach theater. And so there's like a lot of things on our plate. So it can feel like, okay, we got to squeeze all this into a day or a week, but not forgetting that the main thing is love, and it is care.
Yes.
And it's good to be reminded of that, for sure.
And in that vein too, the importance of the riches in the Charlotte Mason education, that's easily one of the things that gets left behind when we are going through our checklist, because high school transcript doesn't care that you're doing Plutarch or poetry or music. It doesn't necessarily show up. But in exposing our children to these things, to the artist and the composer, the folk songs and the hymns and poetry, it's giving them a richer life, and it's exposing them to things that they might not have come across, and it's preparing them for enjoying that throughout their adulthood. And so it's stretching us usually, because we usually haven't had that exposure. And it's giving us common interests that can go into adulthood together, that we can enjoy these things that we might not have known we would enjoy. With, one child really enjoys this composer, one child really enjoys this poetry, that we can grow in new things together in that. And that's another gift of a Charlotte Mason centered parenting.
Yeah. No, that's so good. So good. Miss Melissa, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful just to be reminded of what a gift that we really do have in a Charlotte Mason education. And I definitely have had these moments where I'm like, there's so much more than just a way of educating. It truly is a way of living, I feel like. And obviously, homeschooling, parenting is a big part of that living. And so just seeing how it all kind of just blends together. And
well, it is a gift to be a parent in the first place.
Absolutely.
And in Charlotte Mason's philosophy just helps to enhance that in our own experience. And so I do appreciate you inviting me to be part of this. And I'll be praying for all the people who'll be listening to this, and hope that they can be inspired to just come alongside their children and love together.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you again for joining us today. We'll have to have you back, and we'll talk about more.
I'd be happy to.
Fun things. And yeah, it'll be so great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope that something that was shared really resonates with you. And if so, feel free to email us or to comment and let us know kind of what you got out of today's podcast. I want to remind you that the only true education is self-education. So never stop learning and never stop growing. And we'll see you next week.